Well, thanks everyone for joining us for the very last extended learning call with the EHDI series, and we're grateful for all those that who have participated. These recordings will end up going to the EHDI project, and I think they'll be loading them on their website as soon as I get them loaded up on YouTube. So check that out for in the future so that you can get caught up on some very great learning from some of the best across the state. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce Tori, who has been in charge of, Tori Allen, who's been in charge of all of the extended learning calls, and she's going to lead us through this last call. So go ahead, Tori.
Hi, everybody. Yep, I'm Tori Allen. I am the EHDI family coordinator here in North Dakota, and I also have my fingers in hands and voices as well. And so this has been a great experience. Just kind of wanted to wrap it up with some of our professionals that we had and family organizations that we had present with us with a few questions, and then if there's anything else anybody wants to like talk about, or something that you maybe wanted to talk about last time or when you presented and you forgot, now's the time. And like Deneen said, we will get these uploaded into the EHDI website so that you can watch them, and there'll be a great resource out there. So I think on the call here for us, we have Jordan Anderson, who is with North Dakota Part C in early intervention. We have Deneen, of course, with Family Voices. And looks like we have Deanna with Hands and Voices. And Melinda with Hands and Voices. Nicole with Hands and Voices. Did I miss anybody else? And of course, we have our awesome interpreter here too, Lindsay. I don't know if any of you guys want to talk about who you are and what you do before we get started with some questions. Completely up to you, but
Sure. I can kind of talk a little bit about early intervention. So once again, my name is Jordan Anderson. I am the early intervention specialist for the state of North Dakota. I work under Jackie Dusamelli, who is our Part C coordinator, and we help oversee all of the programs in the state of North Dakota, and provide guidance and work with the federal government to make sure that we are doing things the right way. And early intervention. And so I guess we have Right Tracks in early intervention. Right Tracks is a screening program for any child, any family, birth to age 3. And then we also have early intervention, which is birth up to age 3. If you qualify based on, a developmental disability, diagnosis, developmental delay, conditions, those sorts of things. So yeah, so I'm in early intervention. I don't know if anybody else wants to introduce themselves too.
I can go. I'm Deneen Feist, and I'm the director of Family Voices of North Dakota. We started Family Voices as a nonprofit in 2001, but we were involved for a very long time prior to that, like from 1996 or so. And that was due to, and we also started the North Dakota Parent to Parent program. And the reason that those two got started was because of my son, who has a hearing impairment, or hearing difference. And he is now 33. But from that, I was on the Interagency Coordinating Council Family Involvement Subcommittee years ago is what we were. And there was 10 families on that subcommittee for the ICC. Anyway, they sent us to a lot of, the one thing that we had said as a group was that we needed more parent support in the state. So they sent us to several parent-to-parent USA conferences. At that time, they were called International Parent-to-Parent Conferences. So there was probably 3, 4 of those and they were hosting them then annually. And then the last one well, it wasn't the last one that I attended, but the one that was in New Mexico is when I met with the folks from Family Voices of North Dakota, and they said, well, we need somebody to help us start a chapter in North Dakota. Would you be interested? So I said yes. And then things just kind of fell together from there. So that's how we kind of got started long time ago, 1995 or 96, something like that. So that was from Family Voices.
Hey, Deanna, would you want to kind of talk about how North Dakota Hands and Voices got started and a little bit about it?
Yes, there. Am I unmuted now?
Yes.
Okay, so as Deneen talked about, there was a group of parents and professionals that worked together to bring Hands and Voices to North Dakota. And many, many meetings. And then the reason I wanted to be in on it is because Jaylee was late diagnosed, so we didn't have any services until she was almost 5 before we found the school for the deaf. So I wanted to help change that for parents. So, and we became a startup chapter. We had to be in 2011 was our official startup, but we had to be a provisional chapter for a year before they would approve us. So we did that, and we've had ups and downs. We've had the Astra program and Guide by Your Side, but with the low reporting from Eddie back then, our Guide by Your Side wasn't feasible to keep. I mean, we wanted the parent-to-parent support, but we couldn't afford to pay when we didn't have the kiddos to help in that. So now we focus totally on family support and family events and all that, which Melinda excels at. She is awesome. And I did meet 2 parents this last weekend at the School for the Deaf thing, and they want more information and they want the family events list. So I'm going to text that to them. So Melinda, they'll probably reach out to you. One's from Bismarck and one is, oh geez, they might be in Arthur. So the Fargo ones would be good for them. So, but yeah, that's in a nutshell.
Thanks, Deanna. Nicole, I don't know if you want to talk about North Dakota School for the Deaf at all?
Yeah, I'm just pulling in and I'll get on the computer here in a minute. Sorry, I had to drop a kiddo off. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay, great. So we are the North Dakota School for the Deaf parent infant program, school age outreach, and residential. So we really do, our programming covers the whole gamut of birth to late deaf and aging adults. And our parent infant program, I think we're focusing on early intervention, correct?
So we are, oh, did you lose me?
No,
Nope,
I
you're
can
still
hear
there.
you.
Sorry. Cluster here, but we focus on early intervention for infants birth to 5 per century code. That allows us to see families and infants in the home. We work with audiologists. And can we come back to me?
Yes, that's perfectly fine. Not a
Okay,
problem.
I'll be right back. Real life, right? Give me
Yep,
1 second.
exactly. Melinda, do you want to talk about maybe some family support that you're doing?
Sure. I'll just start by introducing myself. My name is Melinda Fisher. I live in Dickinson with my family. I have 2 kiddos that are diagnosed with hearing loss. One was diagnosed at birth through a screening, and the other was diagnosed at 1 year of age and was aided by 2. So that's kind of how I got involved with North Dakota Hands and Voices. I think this is about my 5th year that I've been involved with North Dakota Hands and Voices. And I guess the part that I play is reaching out to families, trying to organize events. We have a really good family connection out here in Dickinson, and I'd like to see that happen more across the state. But yeah, that's kind of me in a nutshell and what I do.
Thank you. Nicole, do you want to talk anymore or do you want me to move on? Think you're still muted.
Sorry, hang on one second. I'm getting on the computer and I will be much more focused, I swear. Like, so whoever
No worries.
needs to let me in, please let me in. There I am. Okay. Now I gotta hang up on you guys here. However, I also have this like autopilot thing that follows me everywhere because I allowed it one time to come on and I'm not quite sure why it transcribes the meeting. I don't know how it got it, but anyway, okay. So Nicole Swartout, Parent Infant Program, North Dakota School for the Deaf, birth to 5, and then we follow kids into schools where they don't have teachers of the deaf, which is a lot of North Dakota because we're rural. So you only have teachers of the deaf in the larger school districts like Williston and Bismarck and Minot and has their own, and we collaborate with all those teachers of the deaf, but our team of 7 provides in-home services to families or daycares or wherever we need to go, doing assessment every 6 months to track and follow their auditory development, their language development, anything specifically impacted by their hearing loss. I think that's us in a nutshell.
Nice, thank you. So I think we'll just get started with some questions here. And the first question, what advice would you give to new parents? I can kick that off because I am a parent of a 19-year-old. And what I wish I would have known as a new parent are all of the fantastic services that are actually in North Dakota. We were late diagnosed as well, 2 years old. My daughter really struggled all through, all the way up to probably 11th grade with English, and vocabulary and things like that. Now she's just finished her first year of college at NDSU and is thriving. She was on the honor roll, so super proud of her, but I really wish she would have got an earlier start with all of the language stuff and just it would have helped her a lot more, maybe excel more in high school than she did. Now that she's in college and she has, figured everything out. But yeah, that was would be my number one advice I would give is take advantage of all the services, even if you think you don't need them. And me being in Jamestown, smaller community, we did not have as many resources. We were lucky to have a school school for the deaf teacher, who actually used to teach at the North Dakota School for the Deaf. So we got super lucky with that. But just being from a smaller community, we didn't have, I don't think she saw another person with a hearing difference until she went to the camp in Minot. So, yeah, that would be me. So I don't know who wants to go next, but that would be my advice.
I'll go. And yes, absolutely. Take advantage of all of the help that we have in North Dakota. And as a new parent, make sure they do a hearing screening before you leave the hospital. Insist on it. And if they don't, then go to your primary right away and get that done. It would save a lot of headaches for a lot of parents if they did that. So, but, and then, yeah, you'll feel overwhelmed, but make that connection. Whoever it's with, if it's with Family Voices, if it's with PIP, Hands and Voices, early childhood, early intervention, any of those, just you can choose one or all to make a connection with, but do that. So, okay, next.
I kind of have the same advice. It's kind of funny. We're all relating. It's all very similar to what we're each other saying here, but as scary and as daunting as services may be to a new parent or intimidating, don't let them be intimidating. Look at it as help. These services are here to pick you and your child up and keep you moving and make sure that they're getting what they need. And the earlier the better. So the earlier you intervene, the better the outcome. So as once again, as scary and as daunting they are, I promise we're not scary. We want to help, and we'll totally we know if you're grieving, if you're working through some things with some diagnoses. We've all been there with parents, and as parents ourselves, many of us have as well. And we're always here to help. So the earlier the better. And yes, get that hearing screening like as soon as you can. If they don't do it at birth, you do it right away. Like so, or call one of us. We'll come out with a TIMP and OAE and do a screening. So anybody on this call that's working in services. So
Melinda, did you want to add anything?
Sure, yeah, I sure can. I guess, yes, I agree with the early interventions, but I'm also going to add, just because of my own experience, I feel like I try and always remind parents to not get too lost in all of that and to also just enjoy your child. Because I think parents forget to do that, and I was guilty of that. So I feel like a really important piece is to make sure that you are enjoying the journey with your child.
Mhm.
very well said, Melinda. Very
Yeah.
well said. That
I
is,
like that.
yes, it's beautiful.
I'll add the one thing I always tell my parents, one of our first meetings is, you are the expert on your child. I know deaf education. I know the impact of hearing loss, but I do not know your child. Your pediatrician does not know your child. Your audiologist doesn't know your child. You are the expert on your child. So you need to go with your gut and trust in that. And we're all here to support you in that. So that's what I tell parents right away. We're not here to tell you what to do. We're just here to guide you and give you and educate you.
Mhm. I think the only thing that I would add is when my son was initially diagnosed, he was there was no newborn screen when he was a baby. There just wasn't. And it seemed like after he was like 2.5 probably when he was initially diagnosed, and he was babbling and stuff, but he had run a couple really high temps from some ear infections, and it seems like after that it stopped. The way he would respond stopped, a lot of things stopped, and he did a lot of screaming. And I'm sure that was just him trying to communicate and being frustrated. And anyway, when he was initially diagnosed, and I don't know if I've talked about this on the other calls, but my two youngest are 10 months apart in age. I don't know how that happened, but nonetheless it did. So I had Zach on one knee and Carly on the other knee, and the audiologist said to me that she will exceed far beyond what he is able to do. And it was after that my brain shut off. It just shut off. And I don't recall any of that discussion afterwards. So I wasn't going to go back to that audiologist. And I did find a new audiologist that was closer. And fortunately, she also had a son that had a hearing difference, and what a blessing that was. So that was a good parent to parent. It was a good parent provider mix. It just was, it was excellent. And she really helped guide along some of the things that I needed to know in this whole process. So I can't say enough about that. But so the one thing I would say is if you get somebody that tells you what your kids can't do at that age, walk away. Just walk away, because that was astounding to me, just astounding. So, and the other thing is Zach now has his master's degree in clinical counseling, and he is a clinical director in Washington State. So I really am tempted sometimes to go back to those healthcare providers and say, this little guy is the one that you told me wasn't going to succeed. So, and I'm still kind of tempted to do that. Anyway, go ahead.
I'm gonna piggyback off of that a little bit, Doneen. I think it is really important to find good team members.
Mhm.
Really important, because I have many people on this call, I have leaned on professionals a lot just to help, like you said, Nicole, guide. So I think you do need to have
Mhm.
people that are on your team, on your kids' team, that want the same things that you want. So that has also been a really important part of our journey. And it wasn't set up like that from their diagnosis. Like it took time to build that, but it's a super important part of our journey. But
Thank you. And I see, Lana, you just joined us, so I don't know if you want to introduce yourself.
Trying to get the mute button off. I'm Lana Zimbelman, North Dakota School for the Deaf Parent, Infant, and Outreach Program. I work in the central-ish area. I'm out of Underwood.
Thank you. So some of us have already done it, but sharing a successful story, and again, my daughter Gracie has had a lot of successes. And so that's something I can be proud of. And I think probably the biggest successful story that I could share about her is that she is now able to talk to other kiddos or other young adults about hearing loss. And currently she's seeing a boy, and I was super proud of her because she actually told him she wore hearing aids and had a hearing loss before they met each other in person. And she has never done that before. So I call that a win.
That is a win, Tori.
She's not embarrassed about it. She was willing to do it. So any other successful stories?
So I'm going to jump in and just say, I think success is relative, right? So depending on each different story and what we look at, like as professional, like the EHDI system as a whole, like 136 is success, right? Like we're meeting the timeline of what should happen. And we have a new baby that I'm working with that is meeting that, right? Like was identified at birth, had hearing aids by 2 months of age, intervention, all of the things are happening. Sorry, now again, my dog wants to, I'm speaking. But Holly Peterson, I go back to an article she wrote a few years ago that went into the Hands and Voices, I think, but it was like, how do we measure success? And I think every success story is different depending on who's looking at it, who's telling it. And both Deanna and Doneen and Melinda as parents on here, each one of your children have had different experiences. And even, and Deanna, if you referenced it, the late identification, but Geely is a success, right? Like, so at this point, we identify that as successful, but we probably wouldn't have known that because it didn't hit the timeline for early identification. So that would be my only like 2 cents on that.
So Jaylee spoke about her success story last Friday at the School for the Deaf. And her success story was she was isolated and struggling going to Devils Lake Public High School as the only deaf, hard of hearing child at the high school level at that time. So she had a suicide plan that she revealed to us, and then we ended up taking her to a speech competition for deaf and hard of hearing, sponsored by the Optimists, to Faribault, Minnesota, which is the Minnesota School for the Deaf. And she walked onto that campus and her face just lit up and she just started signing, started talking. I mean, it was amazing. And she wanted to go there. So we told her, okay, you research it, you figure it out. So she checked into Montana too, but that was farther away. And we struggled with the school board. I won't get into all of that, but she spent her senior year down there. And that was the best thing for her. It allowed her to branch out and go to Gallaudet for her freshman year. And she joined the soccer team out there. And she was so looking forward to playing soccer. They dropped the program just last week. So now we got to figure out what she's doing. But yeah, she can do whatever she wants. She finally believes that. That's mine.
Well, we can
Yeah,
kind of,
sorry. Do you want
Oh.
me to share? I didn't share yet.
Sure.
So I won't lie and say like none of this has been like it hasn't been easy. It's been really hard, and my kids have and myself have put a lot of hard work and effort into things. But it has paid off, like as far as like if we want to look at our kids like academically, socially, whatever, they're very successful. But my kids are also, sorry, I get emotional. Can you come back to me?
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I get the same way, so don't feel alone at all.
That's a little cheerleader for you, Melinda. Your kids are amazing.
Oh,
And you have every
that's what
reason
I'm
to get
saying.
emotional.
Yeah, they're kind, they're smart, they're funny. So to me, all of those things are just really important too.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
So it can kind of maybe lead us into sharing a time that when the system didn't work and what happened. And for me, going into the IEPs every year, I dreaded it. I hated it. I did not want to sit there for 2 hours and hear about what my daughter couldn't do. I finally said something. I think it was in 3rd grade, because I couldn't take it anymore. And I realized the IEP is there to tell you what your daughter can't do or what your child can't do. But how about we talk about what she can do and what she, what her goals are. And so we kind of changed the way that we brought it around. And starting the next year, then I had her come in and she got to talk about her own goals and what she wanted to do. And we started to get what her goals and what she wanted to do added to her IEP every year. So I think you have to be able to be there to advocate for your child, but you also have to teach them to advocate for themselves which when they're littles, that's a lot harder. But you have to speak up. And you're not going to feel better about it unless you speak up. So I guess for me, it took me a while to do that. I'm kind of a quiet person. And I finally couldn't take it anymore and I spoke up and I felt better then after that.
I'll jump in a little bit because it's different than the parent perspective. And if we bounce back and forth, I love to hear what has happened individually for each of the parents, but having seen a large number of situations where the system has failed families, and having that experience, when it works, it works. When there isn't a loss to follow up, when there is a newborn hearing screening, when they do get put in the system and all the right entities are told, that's great. But there's a lot of times where there's one reason or another. We have a young child within our system who was born in a birthing hospital and their hearing testing equipment was down when she was born. And that mom will cry every time she says that because she wasn't identified until 2.5 and she was profoundly deaf. And so even though she's got successes to be celebrated, that system failed, right? We have kiddos, lots of kiddos. Usually late identification is the biggest issue that we see impacting the level of success that they have. But Lana will be able to say too, we have a handful of kids that would be under the diagnosis of language deprivation. And when you hit the age of the early teen years and you have no language, it is devastating to the school district, to the family, to the child, to every single person that wants to help. There's not a whole lot we can do, like our team can do at that time, because they need intensive work. And there's shortage of TODs, there's shortage of staff that are able to work with the impact of a hearing loss, much less language deprivation. So when you said, make sure you get that screen, Deanna, I think you said that, right? Like really make sure, but they don't even know it's being done. New moms don't even know it's happening when they are taking the baby and they're screening them in the nurse's station, and they may or may not know that they passed. Even they don't even tell them sometimes, it's just something that's done. So I think we just need to do a better job everywhere of educating, I want to go to the birthing classes before they deliver the babies. I want to get to the pediatricians and those who are actually going to get their hands on these babies and these parents. Because we unfortunately see the negative side of that.
And Nicole, just to bounce off kind of what you're saying, is one thing I know we see too in early intervention. I know, Nicole, you guys see this too, is the wait and see approach. They may have failed the screen, and a lot of providers are saying, no, you just telling families, it's okay, we're gonna wait and see. My advice to families would not be to wait and see. Go for it. Get that second hearing screen. Go to an audiologist that can help you through some of those things. I hear that so often, and it's sad because a lot of times wait and see means you kind of fall off the radar. And then, like Nicole said, sometimes you have these kids that are preteens that have no language or little language or little support, that the family's never had support. So then now you're dealing with this very challenging situation. So if you hear wait and see, I think that is an example of a time when the system doesn't work.
Well, and we talk about that a lot. Thank you, Jordan. We talk about that a lot because even in the EHDI system, once upon a time, we were trying to focus on nursing staff and getting them trained because, the lingo changed to refer, not fail, because we need to not scare parents. And really, I'm back on the bandwagon of let's scare parents. Let's let them know this is a an emergency. This is a language emergency. This is a brain emergency. So why wouldn't we tell them they've failed so that they feel like they have to do something about it? But the other thing is, the fluid in the ears. Nurses often want to say, oh, don't worry about it. I'm sure it's nothing. I'm sure it's fluid. Lots of times babies have fluid from the birthing process. And I just heard it today from someone, and they're still being told that. And then this is where a loss to follow-up happens, because if they are supposed to go in for that second screen or even a diagnostic, they're thinking, oh, it's nothing, it's no big deal. I know he heard this or that, or startled at this or that. A mild loss, any loss, is a significant loss that needs to be addressed. And I think that's the message we need to send.
Absolutely.
So our first fail would be, oh, I don't even remember her name, but Dr. Carver was the NICU doctor at Trinity for us. And then we
Sheila,
followed up with
you had Dr. Klein.
Dr. Klein.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And when we finally, well, we had 2 fails, because we went to Dr. Lapp, who was an ENT from Grand Forks, about Jaylee's. And he had an audiologist come in and they said she's fine. She's just slow. It'll take her a while. And finally, once we did get her diagnosed, I went back to Dr. Klein and asked her, and there was never a newborn screening done because she was in the NICU. And I said, well, that's the perfect opportunity to have one done. And they said, well, it got missed. Well, she was in there for long enough. You could have went back and did it. I mean, so it's frustrating. And Dr. Lapp wouldn't support us once we decided to go to the school for the deaf, because he said that's for deaf kids. You have no reason to go over there. So, and he threw her chart down and just said, I'm done with you guys then. So, which was the best decision ever.
Deanna, I have another family, similar story, failed newborn hearing screening. Pediatrician said she does not have a hearing loss, but if you want to take her home and treat her like a deaf baby, go for it.
Oh my.
And she was profoundly deaf and has bilateral cochlear implants and is very successful as a teen now. But there's just not enough education, I guess I would say, for the masses. And I've talked to doctors and pediatricians, and they get like a minute of information on, because there's so many things, right? And
Yeah.
that's speech language pathologists too. There's so many things. Like, where are you going to go with your? So our field, our families are like, we have this like very focused intention on these kiddos and the impact of hearing loss, but out in the big world, nobody's looking at it the way we see it.
Yep.
We just have to share, keep telling the stories.
Yeah.
Anyone else? We have some other questions here. I know we're getting to kind of our hour, coming up on the hour here, but we'll keep going. Maybe with addressing some of the little kids. My child's a baby. Why do I need your services now? Why can't we wait until they're a year or 2 old? Background, like that secondary hearing words and hearing sounds. I think for me that was huge, because I was like, she could hear a little bit, why didn't she pick up more vocabulary? And then when that was explained to me, so they don't get any of that secondhand language, or they're not listening to a conversation across the room and things like that. And so I feel like the sooner they're aided, the more they're going to hear. too. But maybe there's some professionals that have a better answer to that, but.
So I am a big believer in the earlier the better. Kids learn the fastest and they absorb the most between birth to through age 6. So the earlier the better, the earlier we can get kids in services while still enjoying your children. Like we want you to, but the earlier the better. I always tell parents, I've had parents ask me that so many times, like, what if we decided to wait? And I'm like, that's totally your decision, but the sooner we can get some of these language components going, get you set up with other services, with the right supports, you're gonna watch your child just excel, like in so many developmental areas and daily functioning areas as well. So yeah, and I know early intervention, we work really closely with the PIPs. So with Nicole and Lana, and although early intervention looks at all areas of development, Nicole and Lana look more at that specialized, the hearing, and it's just when we combine the two, we make magic happen. That's what I always say. So
I too, I would say, thank you, Jordan. I appreciate that. I agree. I think this is where the parent support comes in, where parents need to tell other parents. I think both you, Tori and Deanna, telling families that you now looking back, know what you missed out on. Not that your children aren't successful without it, because I think it's important but you guys had to work really, really, really hard, right? Like you had to make up all that time. You had to advocate and work almost against the system, like swimming upstream, right? Like to get the successes that you had. Whereas I'm hoping the families that we impact early on, that alleviates some of that. And I'll tell families, I hope if nothing but the first 3 years that we like these new babies, that if we get them right at, they were identified, they're aided by 2 months, they're in services, everything's going on along the way. If they're educated by the time the child transitions from part C to part B at that 3-year transition, and the parent feels confident enough that they understand the lingo for their child, because you're going to go to an IEP meeting and nobody else knows what a decibel is. Lots of people say, oh, it's a 40% hearing loss. That doesn't mean anything to anybody. Like really, honestly, you can't, when you're sitting on an IEP team meeting with a special ed teacher and a general ed teacher, and that's new lingo for them too. They've probably never ever had another child with hearing loss. So I just want to educate our team, educate the families on getting a solid language foundation. We don't care what it is, visual, verbal, auditory, oral, all the things, but you need to understand this so you can, for the rest of your child's educational career, until they're able to do so, advocate for them and explain it and what the importance is of that, of their educational programming. Even if they're successful and on a 504, I have a really good mom I work with, and she does not take that lightly. She does not let that go. Like just because it's not an IEP, I have several parents actually who have kids on 504s, and we do help them, and even educating the child when they're in school age. Like you see them in PIP, but then now they're a second grader and they don't understand their hearing loss. They want to know, and I've had first, second, third graders give PowerPoint presentations to their classrooms so that they can have ownership of their hearing loss, that they can explain why I have these hearing aids and that it's no big deal, but I need them. And I don't know if you guys as parents have had bullying issues with your kids, but I think the kids that have had this ownership and explain it and act like it's no big deal or it's cool, even like I can Bluetooth my phone right to my hearing aids, like whatever it is, like that's kind of fun. That kind of stuff I think will help and go a long way with deaf identity. And I say deaf as a whole, like deaf, hard of hearing, any hearing difference, because it is.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic, and it's nice to hear that things do work sometimes.
Okay, I'm back again. Sorry, I composed myself. I will forever get emotional about it, but anyways, Nicole, I was just gonna talk about how you said like that education piece for like parents. I even think of like I think it's a really hard concept for parents, especially if you don't know anything about hearing loss, like all of us when we start out. I think like that it was a really, at least for me, it was a really hard thing to understand the difference between like, well, yeah, I think they're hearing all these environmental sounds, but their understanding of language, like that was a really hard concept for me. So even though they may be hearing things, you know, like, oh, my kid hears the door slam, they're not understanding the language and things that are happening around them. So I think that's an important thing to note. And then you talked about the presenting to your class and stuff. My oldest has done that every year since kindergarten, and I feel like it's made a huge difference in his identity and then his confidence, and also like peers just understanding. We honestly haven't had a lot of issues. We have had some, but I think that that has made a huge difference. And I mean, kids are curious, they want to know. And once they know, then they kind of move on. So that's been positive for us.
I just want to add, I think parents are the bomb. Like, we learn more from you guys than you learn from us, really, honestly, truly. And Tori, though I don't know Gracie very well, I've seen, you know, her at the presentation last year. But Deanna Daly came up to me after last week and she said she wants to be a deaf mentor. And Bryce, I tell you what, that kid stole my heart a couple of years ago, and I still just adore him. So I think I could just say that about every parent that I come in contact with. You guys you're doing it. You're doing it right. It's so cool.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. And it's not easy and it takes time. But I wish I would have had parent support when she was really little. I did. We were super lucky to have her deaf hard of hearing teacher when she was kindergarten, first grade, told me to label everything in my house. It doesn't matter what, put a label on it. She can't quite read yet, but put a label on it. Everything. So we had labels on everything. We had the closed captioning on every TV. Her sisters still ask me to turn it on because they've gotten so used to it being there, and it helps them listen. So you know, you pick up some of that stuff and it kind of just becomes your normal, I guess. So
And Nicole, you said that you learn from parents or whatever, but I would like to add that we're also learning from our kids. Like I always say, like my kids are my biggest teachers. Like they have taught me more about life than anybody I know. So
And I apologize, Melinda, I didn't say anything. I just focused on Bryce just because he's just the charmer. But I do realize you have two children. And she's a cutie patootie too. Like, can I ask a question, Tori?
yeah, absolutely.
Actually, for Melinda specifically, now that I brought that up, it just kind of popped in my head. When she was born, did you have more concern? Were you more aggressive with the process because you knew about Bryce's hearing loss? Like, how was that birthing identification process different between the two of them?
yeah, so I mean, long story short, we kind of did like all the things that we were supposed to when Bryce was diagnosed. You know, we got the genetic testing and everything, and it came back negative. And so I guess it was always at the back of my mind, always. But she passed her newborn hearing. And then we were like, well, no, just because of the history, we just will keep getting checked. And so when she was diagnosed, I won't lie and say it wasn't like devastating, and I don't really like using that word, but I still went through all the stages, the grief and all of that, but it was like much quicker, much quicker. And I was like, I knew what to do. So that process was really different. And I will say, like, the 7 years of her being diagnosed and Bryce being diagnosed, there was a huge difference in, like, Bryce did not automatically qualify for early intervention. I had to fight to get him tested for that. And then she just automatically qualified, and we got PIP, and I mean, just everything within days just fell into place. And so that was a huge difference. We didn't really have any supports until Bryce was 5 years old. And it was because I felt like I went out and found it. It wasn't just provided. So that was a huge difference in the process. But as far as like worrying about it, like, it was always at the back of my mind. But it was a lot easier. I don't know, just because I knew what to expect. I knew that it was going to be okay. Which I didn't know that with Bryce. Like, you just have all of these fears and, I mean, all of the terrible things that go through your mind. But like with Reagan, I was like, it really is going to be okay. Like, it's going to be hard, but it is going to be okay.
I can't say it ever gets easier when you have another child, knowing, okay, are they gonna have that same loss, or are we gonna go through the same things? But I think sometimes the kiddos, siblings that don't have the hearing loss sometimes get identified as, oh, my sister is the one that wears those hearing aids. So I think that's a process too that we have to remember, that their siblings are there, and you have to pay attention to them too, because I think I was guilty of that a little bit. Focused so much on advocating for Gracie that her little sisters sometimes didn't get that from me. So
I would second that, Tori, for sure. We definitely went through that.
I just had a family of a newborn who has hearing loss who said the older sibling is struggling because they think it's cool that he has hearing aids, and that he gets to have someone come visit him, and that he, you know, and he's being left out. He doesn't get to do any of these special things. So we're trying to brainstorm things where you can put time aside for that sibling, where it's something that's special just for them, where it's their unique time.
Well, the DD Council just trained a lot of individuals for SIB shops, and I'm pretty sure there's a couple that are in Minot, so that would be one thing to start
That's
thinking
great.
about. Mhm.
How is there like when they do a SIB shop, Doneen, is it an age range? Is it just for
Can I ask a
Separate
professional?
them if they're, it depends, they'll separate.
Can I ask a question? I missed the SIP, like SIP or CIP.
SIB
Sib?
sibling, like
Yeah,
SIB
sibling.
Okay,
SIB shop,
sorry.
yep.
I missed that part and I was
Yeah.
like sipping a drink. I don't know.
Sibling. They do, I think it's from like first grade on.
I
that-
think it's
that they
8.
can,
I think it's like 8 to 16. Does that sound right, Denise?
yeah.
When
mhm.
I worked at my previous position, they had we had SIB shops for years, and they're beautiful. Like, I hope all of you take advantage of those. They're
and
Um,
maybe you guys can talk about them and explain what they are too.
yeah.
Please.
So my experience with SIB shop was And this was a long time ago I don't know if I ever helped with one, but I know my coworkers would do them. But they were held at a local community center or a church or someone that would donate the space for us. And then what would happen is children who are siblings of children with special needs can come together and they do projects. They do self-awareness kind of activities, like mental health activities, how to celebrate their successes and just relating to one another. It's beautiful. And I know the kids love it, like absolutely love it. I know the siblings that attended the sib shops where I previously worked, they had the same kids every time, and they'd always bring a friend or find somebody else who kind of fit the gamut for that. So yeah, I highly recommend it. And I'm really excited that they were able to train all these new sib shop trainers.
Yeah.
So yeah.
It'll be good. I think it's really needed. And it needed to be a larger group because it's more than what we could do by ourselves. So it's gonna be really awesome. So the DD Council is the one that sponsored that, and that would be the director is Julie Hornvet, but with the intent that, so this was a train the trainer. So the Sib Shop Trainings is a national organization, and they come out and they came about the same time as Parent to Parent. So long ago I had gone to a Sib Shop train the trainer. So it was the DD Council, the Ann Center, and us that kind of co-sponsored this, because prior to that, I don't know, where did you work before, Jordan?
I worked at the Ann Carlson Center.
Okay, yeah.
In early intervention. Yeah.
Yep. So they had brought, I think it was probably close to 8-9 years ago, 10 even maybe, they had brought the folks from the Sib shop out and did a train the trainer with the Ann Center and then with some of our staff. And you're right, it is such a fun event for all siblings. And they get to express their feelings, and it's just a really good weekend. They have a lunch, lots of activities. So yeah, it's good. So if you have a child that is in that range of 8 to 16, make sure to and I'll post if any of them are going to do an upcoming SIP shop training in their area or workshop now that they have trainers. I'll post that in our Family Voices e-newsletter that goes out once a week. So I think most of you are probably on that list anyway. So yeah, it's a national organization, and to me, it's underutilized, quite honestly. And I mean, like everything, it needs a little bit of funding to, to bring in food and that kind of thing. So organizations would be really, I think it would be great if other organizations would pitch in to help facilitate that too, so we can keep them going. Did that answer the question, Tori?
Yes, absolutely. I think siblings are important, and I know that I failed at that, but my girls can now talk about that, and they always joke that Gracie was the favorite. Well, she wasn't. We just had to focus on her more, but so that's important. And I know we're kind of at our time here. Does anyone want to add anything or have any last remarks to make?
I can't ever zip it, so I just figured I'd add one more thing in there, because I'm looking at the parents that are on here, and I think one thing that I hear and I notice across the state with our team and the different impact that families feel is help parents, if parents look at this, find a good audiologist, find someone that's in your corner, find someone who understands pediatrics, the importance of what you want as a family, and taking the time to sit and explain that to you. I get that they're packed. I get that but I look at it and I'm biased. I just am because I'm here in Minot. So I have Jarek and Trisha. So that's who most of my kiddos see. And I think you all know Jerica, she sits on the Hands and Voices board with us and she does a ton of work and she is a huge proponent of parent to parent support. And
Trisha was one of our presenters too.
yeah, and she's fantastic. You could listen to her forever. And I just think about, Melinda, if you're okay with me saying, like in their work with your kiddos too, and how successful that has been, and just watching families have success because of their audiologists, and also because we work with all around the state, knowing when families don't get that support from a specific entity or audiologist, helping them find the right place where they feel better. I think, Deanna, you said, you know, like it didn't work and then we found someone new. And Doneen, I think you said that too. They said they told you what he couldn't do and then you found someone new. And I don't know that every parent, you think the physician, they're a doctor, right? Like they know. And so you trust. I think many parents get in this backed in this corner where they think they just have to listen to this one person who's telling them about what's wrong with their child. And I want parents to have a positive experience. I want them to want to go to audiology. I want them to want us to come out to their homes. That's not supposed to be something they're going, oh my gosh, this is another meeting, another thing, another, you know, where it's a negative, like they're excited for us to come, you know. So I would encourage families to reach out to other families to find out who that is or other professionals, but helping them support in their audiological journey as well.
That's a great point to make, and I completely agree. Get those, make your team, make your dream team. Absolutely.
Well,
Anyone?
Our team is small, so I always tell families that, like, if you don't like me, you can call my boss and you can ask for someone else, but you're not going to get anyone else. There's only so many of us. You're stuck with me. No, but truly, you should. If there were a conflict of interest of any kind, you should always ask.
I can't imagine anybody wanting to do that, Nicole, but
I gotta say, Linda is like Gracie's favorite from camp, and she talks about Linda, still talks about Linda. So that was the very first adult that Gracie ever met that had hearing aids. So
oh my God, Linda and Tammy spoiled Zach rotten. They were still students yet. Oh, every day he wanted to go back to my
old. You guys quit. You're making us. We are so dated.
Yeah, and they were students, Nicole.
I student taught underneath Denise Marbach on our team, and she's getting her award for her 45th year of service this year.
Wow.
I mean, I can't even imagine what it would be like in one place for 45 years. It's unreal. It's amazing.
That's devotion.
Mm-hmm.
For sure.
Sidetrack. We could probably stop recording. No, you can hang up on it. Sorry.
that's okay.
You mean you're not there, Nicole?
Well, I thank you all for your time and your candid answers and all of that. And it just has been very enjoyable. These series have been, even me having my daughter at 19, you know, being 19, I still learned new things. And I hope that parents utilize these recordings and reach out when needed. And I know that all of our contact information will be included with the presentations and things like that. So again, thank you all. I know give your evening times away to do this, which is super important, but I really appreciate it. And can't thank you enough, I guess. So
Thank you, Tori, for doing this. Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say, if in the future there's an
Yes.
opportunity to do more, I mean, I know we all had our own little presentations, but I think this type of thing is so important. And our family event last week at the school, we really saw some very good connections happening between Janet and parents, but also amongst the parents. And I think I think we have a strong set of parents that are coming up with younger kids that want this type of information and discussion. So I highly encourage you to take this back to Eddie as a huge success and continue to develop something along these lines would be great.
Thank you, appreciate that.
Yep.
Thank you for,
Yep.
Janine, for helping me get this off the ground and
No worries. Yeah.
move that, so. All right, well, you guys all have a great night. I appreciate your time.
Yep.
Thanks all.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.